in honor of Dave Coates. Please join in singing our opening song, The Company of Friends.
When I die, let them judge me by my company of friends. Let them know me as the footprints that I left upon the sand. Let them laugh for all the laughter. Let them cry for laughter's end. When I die, let them judge me by my company of friends. When I die, let them toast to all the things that I believe. Let them raise a glass to consciousness, not spill a drop for grief. Let the bubbles rise at midnight, let their tongues get light as thieves. When I die, let them toast to all the things that I believe. I believe in restless hunger. I believe in red balloons. I believe in private thunder. In the end, I do believe. I believe in inspiration. I believe in lightning bugs. I believe in slow creation. In the end, I do believe. I believe in ink on paper. I believe in lips on ears. I believe what's shared is savored. In the end, I do believe. I believe all lives have meaning. I believe God dwells with us. I believe that heaven's waiting. In the end, I do believe. I believe in intuition. I believe in being wrong. I believe in contradiction. In the end, I do believe. I believe in living smitten. I believe all hearts will mend. I believe our book is written by a company of friends. When I die, let them judge me by my company of friends. Let them know me as the footprints that I left upon the sand. Let them laugh for all the laughter. Let them cry for laughter's end. When I die, let them judge me by my company of friends.
Good evening. On behalf of the Indianapolis Math and Science, a little louder. How's that? Thank you, Grace. On behalf of the Indianapolis Math and Science Academy, I welcome all the family members, friends, and colleagues of David E. Coates to this service of tribute, prayer, and song. My name is Jim Sparks. I'm the president of the board here at IMSA, and that's a position that I started a few months ago when Dave had to step away from the board because of his illness. You might wonder why we are remembering and honoring Dave here in this place, this high school gymnasium. Turns out there's a pretty easy answer for that question. Dave had an absolute love for the students, staff, faculty, and the school leadership of both campuses, this one north and also our west campus. And that feeling, by the way, is very, very much mutual. Grace, on behalf of IMSA, I want to thank you so much for allowing us to honor Dave in this way and in this place. Dave put his love for IMSA to work by serving on its board of directors for over a decade. Many of those years, he served as the president of the board, and it's quite clear that he left an indelible mark on both campuses. With his gentle, positive, action-oriented style of shepherding, Dave facilitated growth at both schools, growth of student enrollment and of financial resources, and most importantly, growth of the academic achievement of our students. He worked with the school leadership and the board to navigate a lot of very complex issues associated with running two schools during the COVID pandemic. Lots and lots and lots of meetings. He collaborated with the mayor's office in a variety of ways to establish and then renew our school charters. Dave took on a very critical leadership role to find and secure financing to purchase this building and to expand and improve the facilities of both campuses. In fact, we are nearing completion of construction to add considerable space on the second floor of this facility over in the main part of the building, as well as building a new gymnasium and repurposing the old gym at the West Campus. Throughout his years serving on the board, whatever needed done, large task or small, Dave was the guy with the plan and the will to make it happen. A problem solver. As one token of our appreciation for all that he did for IMSA, that new gymnasium that I was talking about will be named after our friend and colleague, David E. Coates. In larger measure, all of those who had the pleasure and privilege of working alongside Dave will carry our gratitude for his guidance, leadership, and friendship forever in our hearts. Again, welcome.
So let us bless this place, and I'm going to use the words of a song that was written back in the 60s. What is this place where we are meeting? Only a house, the earth its floor, walls and a roof sheltering people, windows for light, an open door. Yet it becomes a body that lives when we are gathered here and know that our God is near. Words from afar, stars that are falling, sparks that are sowing in us like seeds. Names for our God, dreams, signs, and wonders sent from the past are all we need. We in this place remember and speak again what we have heard, God's free, redeeming word. And we accept bread at this table, broken and shared, a living sign. Here in this world, dying and living, we are each other's bread and wine. This is the place where we can receive what we need to increase our justice and God's peace.
I'm Deb Miller, and 28 years ago, last Thursday, I had the honor of officiating at Dave and Grace's wedding. Theirs was a marriage of two very independent people who were very different from each other. and their marriage was the embodiment of the art of compromise. When they were building their house, for example, Dave wanted neutrals and Grace wanted color. Those of you who have been to their home know that the torso of their house is a neutral and all of the limbs are filled with color. Much like Dave and Grace, it works, and it's beautiful. Dave had some specific things he wanted upon his passing. One of the things he wanted was for the word tribute not to be used in connection with this service. So as you can tell from the number of times the word tribute is written in the program, Dave is not going to get everything he wants. But he was used to that after 28 years of being married to Grace. I'm confident he's not even surprised. The hope for this evening is that the individual tributes to Dave from his friends will collectively paint a vivid portrait of him, because Dave really did firmly believe that in the end, his story would be written by his company of friends. If you would please join in singing the next song, Down to the River to Pray.
As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sisters, let's go down, down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, brothers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, brothers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, fathers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, fathers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, mothers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, mothers, let's go down, down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sinners, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sinners, let's go down, down in the river to pray.
Hi, my name is Bob Lang. This is my wife, Patsy. We've been friends with Dave and Grace for a long time, probably 30 years or so. And Grace asked if I would say a few words about Dave, and I said I'd be honored to do so. And when I was preparing this, I kept thinking of a song I like from an Irish singer named Owen Mack. Now, I'm not going to sing it for you, but I'd like to read you the lyrics. I can only say the pleasure has been mine, for at least I got to know you for a time. But now you're gone, I don't know what to do, and there's a blue moon over my world without you. The times we'd sit and visit for a while, the world seems so much brighter with your smile. When I think of all the things you went through, there's a blue moon over my world without you. The stars will shine much brighter in the heavens now you're there. Each time I think about you, I say a silent prayer. I've lost a special friend, so loyal and true, and there's a blue moon over my world without you. For each of us, there comes a judgment day when all we take is what we give away. You gave so much to all of those you knew, and there's a blue moon over my world without you. So goodbye, my special friend, so warm and true, and there's a blue moon over my world without you. This may seem like a sad song, and in a way it is. I'm sad Dave is gone. I miss him. Dave was a very special friend to me and Pat. I first remember meeting him at a talent night that Grace had at her house, and his talent was a card trick. He did pretty good with it. He did a good job with the card trick. But as I got to know him, I found out it wasn't so much the fact that he did the card trick. He was inquisitive and wanted to know how the magician did that card trick. Very inquisitive. He wanted to find out how things worked. And as time went on and we got closer, we went to Colts games, and I found out there was another side to his personality. Once the Colts were at third down and he was yelling and screaming with the best of them. Usually it's a very quiet guy, and I mean, he was up there jumping and screaming. And we always had our little thing there. We would go to Maxine's for chicken and waffles, and then walk over to the game, watch the game, he'd yell and scream, and then we'd walk back and we'd go home. We traveled together a lot, along with Pat and Grace. That's one of the places where Dave discovered peanut butter-filled pretzels. When we would travel, we had a big jar of them in our truck, and he would just constantly be nibbling on those. And we also found out, or I helped Dave learn how to be an RVer, how to take care of an RV, and some of the trips we had. If we had a few hours, we could tell you about them. Also, Dave and I started doing a lot of woodworking projects together. Dave was the one that got me interested in doing woodworking. And as a matter of fact, the last project that we did together, with the help of Grace and Pat and my nephew Eric sitting back there, was this table right here with the icon on it. Grace had a piece of walnut. She wanted a table that had the live edges and a rustic look to it. So Dave had it all figured out, and we did it. Matter of fact, he could figure out angles and measurements before he even got the pencil and paper out to write everything down. And anyway, enough of that. We're going to get back to the song for a minute. Anyway, I started thinking about this song of Blue Moon. And as Dave would have done, I started researching Blue Moon. And a lot of us think of a blue moon as something sad, or once in a blue moon, rarely happens. But a lot of people rejoice and celebrate a blue moon. They celebrate that there's an extra full moon in the month, so an extra night of brightness. And that's how I want to remember Dave, for the brightness. We can be sad for the loss of Dave, and that's okay. It's part of the grieving process. But I think we should also rejoice and celebrate. Celebrate his life, his accomplishments, and his friendship. I think all of us here today would agree that Dave was a warm and true friend. So let's rejoice in that and be happy with the memories that he's left with us. It just so happens that next month is a blue moon, August 30th and 31st. So when that time comes around, what do you say? We go outside, look up in the sky, find the moon, and think of something happy about Dave. A funny story, maybe a good meal you had together. You know how he loved to eat. Could always find the good restaurants. and maybe a project you did with him, like building a house. Then rejoice and be happy, not just for you, but also for Dave. He's probably up there right now, looking down with a smile on us, looking forward to the Colts seasons. Maybe they'll hit the Super Bowl this year. And he's probably already hit the Lynx a few times, who knows? We can be sad that he's not here with us physically, but we will always be here with us spiritually. And that is something that makes me happy. So goodbye, my special friend. Excuse me. So warm and true. There is a blue moon over my world without you.
We met Grace and Dave about 22 years ago when we moved to Indianapolis, and we needed a realtor. And after looking at 27 homes in 2 days, we settled on a home in Saddlebrook, just about 2 blocks from Grace and Dave. And I honestly feel like God had a hand in that. We were able to develop such a close relationship with Grace and Dave, and I feel everyone feels like they have a special relationship with Dave that's here. But my kids had a really special relationship with Dave because to them, he was their Indiana grandpa. I asked my family to describe Dave in one word or a short sentence, and I used their answers to formulate my thoughts and memories today. Grandpa. One of the earliest memories of Dave was him taking the 3 older kids to Home Depot and Lowe's on Saturday mornings when they would have the kid building workshops. And the kids would always come home with the stool or a birdhouse or something fun that Dave had made with them. And of course, before he brought them home, he would say, kids, I think you've worked really hard, so we need to go to Ritter's before we get home. And my kids definitely benefited from Dave's sweet tooth many times. We would get calls, usually in the summer, in the afternoon, and he'd say, Marshall, I think the Pitcher kids need Ritter's tonight. So I think it was a win-win because Dave really liked his sweets. Supportive. Dave helped the kids with their school projects, and he would take them out to the shop when there was something that had to be built or something that had to be measured. Dave was so good at that, and one time he helped one of my kids build an instrument. So they decided on a rain stick, and they made 2 of them, and they were the coolest rain sticks. He's 23 years old, and he still has the rain sticks. They sound professional. They're really neat. Whether it was soccer games, singing programs, birthday parties, baby blessings, missionary farewells, Dave was present at all that he could be, even if that required traveling to different states, because we moved from Indianapolis after 6 years. Our son Simon even felt comfortable and close enough to his Indiana grandpa to ask him to pray at his baptism. Yes, Dave was very present and supportive. Dave went out of his way to help and serve others. Over the years, my parents grew very close to Grace and Dave, and this was because they were very grateful that we had our Indiana grandparents so close to us to take care of us because they lived far away. And because they became close, Grace and Dave would go visit my parents in Utah, and they just became part of the family, and my parents started inviting them to our family reunions. And that was 45 to 50 people, just my siblings and their children were 45 to 50 people under one roof. So it was definitely baptism by fire for a big family. And one year we decided to go on a hike when we were together, and one of Grace's friends wanted to go who had just had a baby. The baby was too little to take because it was a 15-mile hike. And so Dave, together with my mom, said, we've got this. You guys go. We'll take care of this baby. Well, I think I need to tell you some specifics. My mom at that time was already in a wheelchair. She couldn't physically lift, burp, feed, change a baby, none of that. Dave, on the other hand, could do the physical things, but he had no experience with babies. So for that long day, like 5 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, my mom and Dave really bonded over taking care of this baby. Yes, Dave went out of his way to help and serve others. To Dave, the individual was the most important. No matter where we lived, the effort was always made to visit our family, and that even included a couple of cold winters when we lived in North Dakota. And I'm telling you, we didn't get a lot of visitors in North Dakota. It's not convenient to get there, it's not on the way to anything, and there's really not a lot to do, but he made the effort to come. Another time where Dave really put the individual's importance of the individual first was they had invited our youngest daughter to go on a trip with them, my youngest daughter, Jane. And we lived in Colorado, which was where we live, and Dave didn't want her to have to fly alone to Indiana. So he got on a plane, I met him in Salt Lake City, and they let me take my daughter Jane to him, and he got right back on the plane and turned around and flew back. So, sorry. That was just really touching that he would do that. Trusting. One summer, Grace and Dave came to visit with their RV, and they were getting the RV ready in front of our house to take the kids to Canyonlands. I had just returned from getting the learner's permit for our oldest son. So, you're only like 15 and a half, learner's permit, okay. They decided to take one of our cars with them because after they got the RV all set up, they didn't want to unhook it to go drive into town. So, Dave, you didn't have to twist Dave's arm to ride in the car because you know how much he loved that RV. So he said, I'll ride with Charlie and let him drive. And my thought was, okay, but I literally just got his learner's permit. I didn't say anything, but Dave got in the car and Charlie said, yeah, Mom, he lounged his chair back and said, okay, I'm gonna take a nap now. So this was my son's first time on the interstate, barely a learner's. Yes, Dave was trusting. In closing, Dave was Christ-like and showed unconditional love. Through the years, I have gone to Grace and Dave for anything from last-minute babysitting to needing their prayers in challenging times. One particular time I really needed support for a family member, and Dave said he would pray. And I know he did, because 2 days later he called me and he said, Marjol, I've got some ideas and some support and things to help you through this. Yes, Dave was Christ-like and loved unconditionally. Everything Christ touched only gets better. Our lives have only been better because Dave's faith and Christ-centered life has touched ours.
Please join in singing our next song, Give Yourself to Love.
Kind friends all gathered round. There's something I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside, where strangers are as family, loneliness can hide. You must give yourself to love. If love is what you're after, open up your hearts to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. I've It's planted like a seed. Love can't give you everything, but it gives you what you need. And love comes when you're ready. Love comes when you're afraid. It'll be your greatest teacher, the best friend you have made. You must give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. If love is what you're after, open up your hearts to the tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love.
This reading comes from the first letter of John. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is of God. Everyone who loves is begotten by God and knows God. Whoever is without love does not know God, for God is love. In this way, the love of God was revealed to us. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might have life through him. In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as expiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we must also love one another. No one has ever seen God, yet if we love one another, God remains in us, and his love is brought to perfection in us. This is how we know that we remain in him and he in us, that he has given us his Spirit. Moreover, we have seen and testify that the Father sent his Son as Savior of the world. Whoever acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God remains in him and he in God. We have come to know and to believe in the love God has for us. God is love, and whoever remains in love remains in God, and God in him. In this is love brought to perfection among us, that we have confidence on the day of judgment, because as God is, so are we in this world. Very early on in our conversations, Dave's and my conversation, Dave made reference to this passage. We were talking about how our view of religion and Christianity and faith had changed over the years. And again, he made reference to this passage, that when you get right down to it, that is what Christianity is about. Loving God and loving one another and reminding ourselves that we have been loved by God. There is a story about John, probably apocryphal, but a wonderful story nonetheless. He's 100 years old, and he belongs to this little community, and whenever they gather together for prayer, John has to be carried in. And as he is carried in, he would always say the same thing: little children, love one another. And this kind of frustrated the community, because John was the last person alive who knew Jesus directly. And they thought, well, he can tell us a lot of other things. So at one point, they finally get up enough nerve to ask him, why do you always say the same thing? Why don't you tell us something else? And John says, if we get that one right and we do nothing else, we have received the greatest gift in the world. If we only love one another and nothing else gets done, we have received the greatest gift in the world. And you'll notice on the front of the program, there is this color, together let us make a world poorer in hatred, richer in love. That comes from a card that David had made for his ordination. And again, I don't think he had to wait till he was 73 to figure out what religion was. He got it. He gets it. And as you and I pause to remember these last 15 months, as Dave and Grace negotiated the journey of ALS, I think we have been in the presence of great love. I would say heroic love. The threat of death called to mind in both of them of how much they loved each other. David's acceptance of his situation, which some days was more and some days was less, as it would be for any of us. That acceptance is an expression of love. Traveling halfway around the world and places in between was also a form of love. I think what I observed along with the love was heroic, and I do mean heroic patience, particularly on the part of Grace. And David as well. I mean, it's not easy to be in that position, obviously. So I call your attention to the last verse of the reading. God is love, and in this love brought to perfection within us, we have confidence on the day of judgment, because as he is, as God is, so are we. So are we who live in this world. And we have seen and heard and touched that verse. As God is, so we who live in the world, that's who we are. It has been fulfilled in our hearing. It has been fulfilled in love.
I want to also call your attention to the cover of the program, because Dave wrote the prayer that appeared on the back of the card, and he wrote it in 1974, and Dave never changed. As part of Grace's attempt to continue Dave's mission of creating a world richer in love, Grace has made the candles that are on those tables over there for you. A few years ago, Grace's brother was diagnosed with a tumor on his kidney. Grace started lighting a candle every day to pray for her brother, and she placed it so that she would see it throughout the day when she walked by. By the time her brother was cured, she had more people to pray for, so she continued the practice for others who needed prayers. When Dave was diagnosed with ALS, she asked people to do the same thing for them. So at the end of the service, please take a candle, take it home, light it, and when you do, say a prayer for someone who needs one.
Evening. My name is Kevin Mickey. I am very happy to have been able to call Dave my friend. When Grace asked me to say some words this afternoon about what Dave meant to me, I kept coming back to the same thing, which was, interestingly enough, food. Seems to be a common theme. In my case, it was a box of donuts. Many of you, I'm sure, remember really horrible event in the nation's history that occurred in late August of 2005 when Hurricane Katrina impacted the Gulf Coast of the United States and was incredibly horrific for the people that lived there that are still feeling that effect today. I was one of a team of individuals who worked on responding to that disaster and spent 30 nonstop hours running models, being in meetings and calls and so forth. But the thing that really stands out to me where Dave was concerned is he never left my side. He was there. Overnight, came in to see how I was doing. And at one point, he shows up with a box of a dozen Long's donuts. Now, how many of you in this room have never had a Long's donut? Your life is lacking. If you like donuts and you've not had Long's donuts, you need to fix that tomorrow morning. Go get a donut, make it a Long's donut. They are the best you can find. If you cannot find a little joy in life with a Long's donut, there is something probably wrong. Dave understood that. He did have a sweet tooth, and if you followed Dave anywhere for a meal, you would not be disappointed. And this was indeed the case, and yes, I did, over that 30 hours, eat that entire box of Long's donuts. It did help. It really did. I needed it. More importantly, I needed Dave. He was just there. You know, he checked up on me. Wasn't a technical person. I was running the computer, but Dave was always there. How you doing, Kevin? You know, is there anything I can do to help? Would you like to talk about how things are going? You know, it was a tragic experience, but Dave was there. So, you know, that experience really stuck out for me, that I've known Dave now for a lot of years. And as I've thought about the things that he taught me, I came back around to three things in particular. One is he led a life of service. He made such a huge difference in the world. But along the way, I don't recall a single time where he bragged about his good works. Not one. I learned about what Dave was and who he was and what he had accomplished from other people. He led by example. And I can't think of a better way to live your life. He was a mentor to so many people. I had the privilege of working with him at the center at Indiana University that we were both part of. And every person that was in that center that ever needed to talk, to have a friend, to just voice what they were thinking, whatever it was, he was there to listen. He taught me to listen. I saw that happen with colleagues. I saw that happen with clients. It was magical. I never really figured it out, still to this day, how he could come and talk to someone with whom he had very little in common and strike up a relationship to find that common ground. It's just amazing to watch. The second thing was his attitude. It was positive. You've heard, you know, I mean, those of you who have been close to Dave and Grace over the last few months have truly witnessed a miracle. I mean, I can't think of a better role model, either of them, to get through something like what they've gone through these past few months. That positive attitude carried them through their entire lives. It was amazing to watch. It was amazing to be part of. You know, several of us have, you know, friends of mine in this room have tried to think of the one time when Dave really was angry about something. If you know of an example, I'd like to hear about it, because I have no awareness of that at all. I don't know of anybody in my life that I've ever found that's had such a consistently positive attitude. Dave was a true role model in that way. And the third thing that I cannot stress enough has impressed me and changed my life was his sense of devotion. His devotion to what he believed, his devotion to who he was, his devotion to Grace was second to none. I mean, he truly was a role model. I'm honored to have called Dave a friend, but I'm truly blessed to have had him as a role model and as a mentor.
Hello. Hello, I'm Mary Greiner.
And I'm Jane Francis King.
Although our friendship with Dave and Grace may have been much shorter than many of yours, we would like to share a few of our thoughts. Our relationship began very casually. We attended the 8 o'clock Mass at IHM. Most of us sit in the same seat every Sunday. Pre-COVID, Dave always sat in the pew in front of us, and after the COVID break, the pew behind. Through the years, our brief pre-Mass greetings and exchanges grew into conversations as we shared various interests, and our frustrations over the Colts and our golf games. Dave also shared the good news along with the challenges that he and Grace were experiencing while building their new home. Dave acted as a general contractor. Was there anything he couldn't do? Our relationship continued to grow through the years. It wasn't that we socialized with each other outside of Mass, but we did develop a special bond. We would even let each other know if we would be out of town the next week or so, always sharing the travel experiences upon return. Early last year, Jane and I noticed Dave had been losing weight. We were concerned. Then in March, Dave and Grace came to Mass to tell us of his diagnosis. It was difficult to hear, but it meant a lot that they wanted to share the news with us, and they knew we would be there for them. One of the things we most admired about them is their determination to enjoy life to the fullest throughout the struggle with ALS. Not only did they follow through with travel plans they had made, going to Jerusalem, for example, but they made new plans and had more adventures, a train trip through Canada, a visit to Hawaii, and a South American cruise from Buenos Aires around Cape Horn to Santiago, Chile, along with driving trips to visit friends and family.
When at home in Indianapolis, Dave continued to attend the 8 o'clock Mass at IHM. When his legs would no longer cooperate and let him walk into church, he drove a power chair. He could really move in that chair, which would come apart to fit into the car's trunk. After Mass, we would help Grace get the chair pieces into the car. Let me tell you, she is stronger than she looks. Dave continued to enjoy interaction with friends, playing games, and following his favorite sports on TV. His crossword skills were awesome. One day, I played secretary for him as he worked crossword puzzles. Since the ALS kept him from filling in the squares, I read the clues and he provided 90% of the answers. He insisted we do all the across clues first, then go back and get the remaining down ones. Much faster that way, he said. Actually, it was faster because of his skills. I remember this every day as I do the crossword, and I need downwards just to have a chance to make any progress. And I smile. We have been blessed by knowing Dave, inspired by his courage and the way he coped with his diagnosis. We should remember that if we are very fortunate, casual conversations can lead to relationships that will always be treasured.
All of you here are welcome to offer a tribute to Dave if that is something that you would like to do. If that is something you would like to do, if you would take the time during the next song to gather your thoughts and come to the front of the stage here when the song ends, we will move the microphone down from the stage to the floor in front. Our next song is Lights of the City.
Where we'll meet in a spring.
Would anyone like to offer a tribute at this time? Well, I was going to move that down with you, but you walk better than I do, so I'm going to let you come up here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Johnson. I apologize for reading this small tribute today, but I need to find a way to get through this the way he would have wanted. Lifetime friendships are a rarity, I think, and if you're lucky enough to have one in your life, you know what I mean. Dave and I met in the fall of 1962 as freshmen at Bishop Brute Latin School. More than 60 years ago, this was. And since then, we've been attached in one way or another. When you're new to a school and you don't know anybody, you look for some anchoring point, some connection to help you reduce the anxiety. And Dave was that for me. I met him one day and we became fast friends. He introduced me to a few of his West Side friends and I was good from there. Dave, not particularly known for his athletic prowess, would be shocked and embarrassed if I used a sports metaphor to describe him. So I will. Dave was one of those teammates who raised everyone around them, raised everyone's game. He certainly did that for me. He made me a better friend, a better student in those earlier years, a better seminarian. At Friday night recreation, we played ping pong and even won a couple of CYO tournaments together. We were lifetime golf partners and spent many wonderful rounds playing with Mark Schwarzkopf and Randy Hartley, our buddies. Dave kind of sucked at golf, but his experience was he made the experience so much more fun because, like Tom, his father, Dave had a biting wit and knew how to use it. There will be others following me who would tell you of many great accomplishments that Dave achieved, but I'm going to tell you of a small one that means so much to me and best sums up the effect on my life. My wife and I are fortunate enough to retire on a cabin in the woods on Lake Cumberland, and we live in the middle of a forest surrounded by the beauty of nature. As I was building this house, Dave, Randy, and Mark would occasionally help, usually with the reward of golf wrapped around some carpentry or tree clearing work. On one weekend, just Dave came down, and we built a little 15 by 12 foot covered front porch. And Dave, in later years, turned out to be a pretty decent woodworker, but then, 25 years ago, neither of us could be considered craftsmen. That fact did not deter us from moving forward, and we stumbled through a project. He was a problem solver, as has been mentioned many times. We were occasionally stumped, but we enjoyed the whole process of creating something that didn't exist before. That was 25 years ago, and my modest front porch has been the site of many great events, great and small. My children have come to our house by that porch. I've rocked my grandbabies on that porch. I proposed to my wife on that porch. I've apologized to my wife on that porch. I've watched deer wander through our front woods from that porch. And each morning, I gratefully listen to birdsong and say my morning prayers on that porch. Dave was instrumental in constructing schools and churches and far grander projects, but none more meaningful than my little porch. The landing is only 3 feet off of the ground, but Dave lifted my life and my soul far higher. Kindness and respect was always there between us. In our second to last conversation, though he could hardly breathe, Dave told me a golf joke. In our last conversation, he asked me to care for Tom's burial flag, Tom, his father, because he knew I would. Our friendship has always raised me up, comforted me, kept me connected, and made me a better man. Good teammates do that for you. Rest in peace, Dave.
anyone else who would like it to offer a tribute at this time?
I want to mention, since it already had been mentioned that Dave liked the 8 o'clock Mass. Dave did that for 28 years at Immaculate Heart. Never lost his love for the church, but that's not what I'm going to do right now. This reading is from Isaiah chapter 25. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples a feast of rich food and choice wines, juicy, rich food, and pure, choice wines. On this mountain, he will destroy the veil that veils all peoples, the web that is woven over all the nations. He will destroy death forever. And the Lord God will wipe away the tears from all faces. The reproach of his people he will remove from the whole earth, for the Lord has spoken. And on that day it will be said, indeed, this is our God. We looked to him and he saved us. This is the Lord to whom we looked. Let us rejoice and be glad that he saved us. So on the Sunday before David died, I had one of the most unusual and profound experiences of my life. Grace calls me and says, Dave wants to have a drink with you. And you have to understand by this time, Dave is on a fair amount of morphine and Ativan. And I said, are you sure? The last time we tried that, it didn't work so well. And Grace said, well, he asked the nurse, and the nurse said, do what you want. So I go over to Dave and Grace's, and Dave had asked Grace to fix some shrimp and some smoked salmon. And we sat there, and Dave couldn't feed himself by that time, nor could he even raise the glass, which was a Manhattan. That's what we typically drank. So Grace very kindly did all of that for him. And so we drank. He only had a half of the one, which prevented another bad round of interaction with drugs. And we ate salmon and shrimp. The conversation was lucid, it was quiet. I actually do not remember the conversation much. And perhaps I don't know, it must have lasted maybe 45 minutes. It's one of those experiences that when you're immersed in it, the reality of it only comes later. Isaiah takes this somewhat ordinary but unusual experience of eating together and drinking. He turns that into a heavenly image, turns it into a promise of no more death and no more tears. And then Jesus, who stands in the tradition of Isaiah, takes that image and raises it to a whole new level. Father Timothy Radcliffe, a Dominican, says of Jesus, Jesus is the poor man who in the face of death chose to break bread with his friends. Jesus is the poor man who in the face of death chose to break bread with friends. And Jesus too makes a promise. Very simply put, I will be with you always, even to the end. Dave had good days and bad days, and he struggled with his faith from time to time. There would be a good day and there would be a bad day, a day of doubt. But Dave, consciously or unconsciously, had to have some notion of the connection that he was making to Isaiah and Jesus. In a simple act of friendship and a meal and solidarity. I want to have a drink with you. And he thought he was going to die the next day. Consciously or subconsciously, it was an act of faith. He remembered the promise. And that's why it's so important for us to be here, to remember the promise. It's why it's so important for Christians to gather together to hear the word or to receive the Eucharist. In some sense, don't forget the promise. Do this in memory of me, in memory of my self-gift and love. Do this in memory of the promise. That's one of the reasons for us to be here tonight. Remembering Dave, remembering Isaiah, remembering Jesus, remembering a drink 3 days before death, and especially remembering the promise.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Toby Miller, and I'm standing next to the longest serving angel of my life, my mother, Velvet Miller. I am a professional mama's boy. So it's not only good that she's just here because I'm a mama's boy, but also because recognizing and appreciating my mentor, my friend, my leader, I would need that kind of strength, right? And the other part of this was, when David and Grace indicated that I would be having this invitation to speak on this kind of occasion. One, it's an easy thing to do, but I couldn't write anything. So I'm just going to give you what's on my heart. I met Dave almost 30 years ago. He was my boss at the Greater Indianapolis Progress Committee. And he quickly moved from being boss to mentor and friend. And I oftentimes speak in terms of acronyms. So I'm going to give you two of them. One, Grace said, Toby, be brief. One, because she knows me. And I tend to spell brief, be ready, I'll eventually finish. The other one was an acronym of the word Dave. Grace invited us to speak about what he means to us. And the acronym that I came up with as I was sitting there was devout, adventurous, visionary, and encouraging. It's kind of how I knew him. Dave taught me a lot of things. He taught me how to golf. I'm not a good golfer, like he wasn't a great golfer either, but he always kept on encouraging me even though I'd get a 10 on a par 3, right? Toby, just keep on. At least one shot, I'd feel like I was Tiger Woods. One shot of a round of 120 strokes, whatever. But he taught me how to find the good things even in my bad. He taught me how to be a good husband by modeling how to say yes, dear. because no matter what Grace said, I knew that was what was going to happen. But he also showed me how to love a wife. I see you over there. My wife's right there, so he taught me how to do that. He taught me how to be a really good Colts fan and a really good Pacers fan. But we realized we can't go see the games together anymore. Because the last Colts game we went to, that was the game Andrew Luck decided to retire. And the last Pacers game we went to, that was the time when Paul George injured his leg. So we agreed, no more games together. The other thing that Dave taught me was focus. And a funny story about Dave and the word focus is we were traveling on a business trip. Grace, you've heard this one, I know. We're traveling on a business trip, and we made it to the gate about 45 minutes ahead of our flight. So we were prepared, ready to go, and we were sitting there at the gate and got into a deep conversation about how to save the world. And we sat at that gate and talked, and then turned around and looked and found that we missed our plane. They had been calling, but we were not paying attention to anything except the conversation. And Grace says, that probably says more about you than anything else. But it was one of my favorite stories about David because we were focused, and his life, his legacy, his model, to me, was a testament of focus. And many of you know some of the word David, dedication, devout, focus, when it comes to my heart in terms of sharing some of the things that David would not want to be shared today. So I'm going to do it. The word tribute, you heard that Dave didn't want a tribute. He thought tributes were for people who had done great things. And I sat at his feet watching him do things not only as an employee, but as a friend and as a community servant. So that conference that we had gone to, we were learning about how to impact our communities and reduce violence. That was almost 30 years ago. And the ideas that came from that conference showed up in our community through home nurse visitation, which has been going on in our community for 20-some years. That model came from Dave's work and advocacy, and he did not let that go. As a matter of fact, many of you have probably had those conversations with David about the importance of home nurse visitation and the impact it can have on our community. And hundreds of mothers and their children have benefited simply because he would not let that go and brought that idea to our community. David also, in the face of tremendous racial and cultural strife, sat with me and came up with a vision of how to, when the Klan came to Indianapolis, it was David who called all the cultural institutions in our community and said, let's have a competition at a marketplace of ideas. Their ideas versus a community that comes together. And on the day of the Klan rally, every cultural institution in our community opened its doors up for free. And thousands of people enjoyed coming together as a community that valued diversity, simply because David said, let's make it so, and then he made that happen. He was a leader with our Race and Cultural Relations Leadership Network. But more importantly, he was somebody who everybody who knew him and knows him found as reliable, faithful, committed. And I'm glad I'm here with my mother because he loved my mother like I loved my mother. Grace loved my mother like I love my mother. And my mother's from or lives in Mississippi now, But every time I talk to Dave and Grace, the first question isn't, "Hey, Toby, how you doing?" The first question is, "How's your mother?" And it's come to a point when my mom says I'm on my way, I'm asking, are you going to stay with me or are you going to stay with Dave and Grace? The fact is, when somebody loves your mother like I love my mother, they become more than just friends. They're sheroes and heroes, mentors, guides, reliable, devout, adventurous, visionary, and encouraging. I love that man. I love that man.
My desire was to have Toby to speak for both of us, but I will add this. I grew up in a Christian home, and at some point in my life I chose to be a Christian, and I work constantly to be a true Christian. When I met Dave and Grace, I understood what a true Christian can be. We've heard the words today of love and what it means, and the embodiment of Christianity was with Dave and Grace. So I thank you for showing and sharing that love.
When Dave was diagnosed in 2022, Grace tried to think of an appropriate way to honor him. With the help of friends, she has established the Dave Coates Academy for the creation of sacred icons. The Orthodox Church teaches that an icon is a two-way door of communication between our world and the spiritual world. If you have not yet had the opportunity to do so, at the end of the service, please stop by the table over there to view the beautiful icons and to learn more. The Academy will be a living memorial to Dave for years to come. There will be an opportunity again at the end of the next song if anyone has anything they would like to add. Our next song is Holy Is Your Name.
Holy is your
Would anyone else like to speak at this time?
My name is David Bodenhammer. For a number of years, Dave Coates and I were colleagues at the Polis Center at IUPUI. Polis is a community-focused center interested in how it is that we can improve the city that we love and live in. The title of my eulogy tonight is The Measure of a Man, the Legacy of David Coates. In it, you're going to hear echoes of everything that has been said tonight. Dr. Martin Luther King once remarked famously that you measure a man by the content of his character. And tonight you have heard the content of the character of Dave Coates. So what is the measure of a man? Plato said it was how he handled power. The English essayist Samuel Johnson believed it was how he treated someone from whom he had nothing to gain. For Dave Coates, it was the company of friends he kept. It is this sense of worth that we celebrate today. The measure Dave chose for his life says much about why we treasure him as a colleague, counselor, leader, friend, and as a man whose legacy we acknowledge in a place he served. Like you, I was privileged to call Dave a friend. Our introduction came when he headed the Greater Indianapolis Progress Committee, and it revealed much that I came to admire in him. He had just finished arranging chairs for a board meeting, and he was on his way to get refreshments for the group. Service to others, I discovered, was a core value, and no task toward that end was too menial for him to undertake. I learned more about Dave when he agreed to join the Polis Center, first to lead one of our divisions and later as associate director. What he brought to these roles was key to our success. He was an experienced administrator whose knowledge of Indianapolis ran deep. But other traits proved more valuable. He was intellectually curious and creative. He had a wide network of friends and acquaintances who trusted him. He had high standards and always sought to ensure that we delivered what we had promised. Yet as important as these attributes were, his greatest contribution was his concern for others, especially members of the staff who were experiencing personal or professional problems. His care and compassion made us better colleagues and more effective as a center. My friendship with Dave deepened when we began meeting regularly after he told me about his diagnosis. At first, we danced around the topic that now consumed Dave's life. But the conversation about sports and politics was lively, yet ultimately unsatisfying. At his invitation, we soon turned to the hard questions: hope, faith, and doubt, death, and how Dave wanted to live during the time he had left. We returned to these issues often. They never dominated our visits. Dave was a great raconteur who never lost his keen desire to share ideas and experiences. But these more serious conversations made a lasting impression on me. They were his gift to me, and I now want to share them with you. When faced with the imminent death of his father, the Welsh poet Dylan Thomas urged him, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." Dave understood this desperate plea, but it was not his wish. He wanted to live. More than once, he mentioned how difficult it had been to accept his prognosis, although his main concern was with Grace, who by necessity would have to share his burden. The difficulty he experienced was how the disease had challenged his faith, which had always been central to his life. He did not blame God, nor did he wonder why he had been cursed with ALS. Rather, he faced an existential question. What did he believe? Dave's answer was beautiful in its simplicity. His faith was not in the creeds, rituals, and practices of the church, as meaningful as they were to him. Following my diagnosis, Dave said, I realized that my faith rests on a profound truth. God is love. Everything else flows from it, and it is this belief that sustains me and gives me hope. When I shared this with a clergy advisory committee on which Dave served, the pastor of one of the city's largest churches gave thanks for his powerful testimony and exclaimed, "What a gift." As months became weeks and then days, I asked Dave how he wanted to be remembered. In his typical fashion, he reframed the question to what had provided the most satisfaction in his life. His answer will not surprise you. Aside from his love for grace, it was the opportunity to serve his church, his community, his friends, and unnamed others. I always enjoyed being able to connect people, he said, to help them find jobs or pursue their dreams, to secure help, to provide support. His treasure was in the relationships he had formed, and he wanted to share with others what had been most meaningful to him. Here is Dave's legacy: love, faith, service, relationships. It is no wonder that we gather to celebrate his life. And what is the measure of a man? For me, and perhaps for you, one way is through the example of Dave Coates. We miss you, Dave, but we will not forget you. Thank you for letting us be your friends.
Please join in singing "I'll Fly Away."
Some bright morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to that home on God's celestial shore.
anyone else has anything they would like to add, this is your last chance. Okay.
Well, wasn't this fun? Dave would have loved it. He would have loved it. I didn't think I was going to cry because I've been crying so much. But this has just been wonderful. And I can't, you know I'm a singer and I've led music groups. What about this group? I brought in the best. And the first time that they've all been together was at 6 o'clock tonight. So, thank you. Thank you. Works when you have lots of talent. He was a good man. Your visits to him were very important. Father Jeff, thank you. We had our own personal chaplain when we signed up for hospice. They said, should we sign a chaplain for you? No, we got one. Oh, okay. And then a couple more times, would you like anybody to come and pray with you? No, we got one. And Jeff was the person. I wondered how he would walk that walk, walking with Dave, and then walking with me. Two different walks, two different paces. But you did it well. Thank you for being here again.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Brock. I grew up with David at Mary Queen of Peace Church in Danville, Indiana. I lost track of David in 1962 when I graduated from the Brescia Brute Latin School, where he joined after I left. I want to thank all of you for filling in the gaps, because I didn't get to know David again until his anointing. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think there's one thing that Dave would want to have underlined at the end of this service. Grace, you were not only Dave's family, you were his best friend through the end. We are in awe of you. The way you loved and cared for him, even in the worst of times. The way you packed so much living into his life, especially during his last year. As deep as this loss is for you, we hope that you find some comfort in knowing that for those of us lucky enough to be in your lives, to witness your relationship, it was obvious to us that we were in the presence of something sacred. Just because the service ends doesn't mean that the tributes have to. They can continue after the service or in the parking lot. They can go on for the rest of the lives of Dave's friends. I really think Dave would be so pleased if this service became a jumping off point instead of an ending. If this company of friends would continue to think of each other, to talk to each other, and to pray for each other. We end this service as we began, with the company of friends.
When I die, let them judge me by my company of friends. Let them know me as the footprints that I left upon the sand. Let them laugh for all the laughter. Let them cry for laughter's end. When I die, let them judge me by my company of friends. When I die, let them toast to all the things that I believe. Let them raise a glass to consciousness and not spill a drop for grief. Let the bubbles rise at midnight. Let their tongues get light as thieves. When I die, let them toast to all the things that I believe. I believe in restless hunger. I believe in red balloons. I believe in private thunder. In the end, I do believe. I believe in inspiration. I believe in lightning bugs. I believe in slow creation. In the end, I do believe. I believe in ink on paper. I believe in lips on ears. I believe what's shared is savored. In the end, I do believe. I believe all lives have meaning. I believe God dwells with us. I believe the heavens waiting. In the end, I do believe. I believe in intuition. I believe in being wrong. I believe in contradiction. In the end, I do believe. I believe in living smitten. I believe all hearts will mend. I believe our book is written by our company of friends. Let them judge me by my company of friends. Let them know me as the footprints that I left upon the sand. Let them laugh for all the laughter. Let them cry for laughter's end. When I die, let them judge me by my company of friends.
Thank you all for coming.